Good afternoon. This presentation is for the module Popular Culture and Resistance in the Portuguese-speaking world. My student number is 2297312. For this assignment, I chose to discuss the concept of popular culture, high culture, and culture industry. First and foremost, those three elements have a common word that needs to be defined: culture. In the 1960s, several intellectuals deeply questioned the notion of culture. This questioning led to the creation of a special field of study called cultural study, created in the city of Birmingham. Amongst these intellectuals, there were, for example, Stuart Hall, Raymond Williams, and David Morley. According to Raymond Williams, culture is one of the two or three most complicated words in the English language. He suggested three broad definitions that you can see on my visual aids. Also, the British cultural theorist Stuart Hall argued that popular culture was a mechanism where collective social understanding are created. If I have to give myself a definition of culture, I would define culture as something that anyone has. It is made of our habits, the way we express ourselves, the way we dress, what we believe, what we consume. Culture is something that is acquired over the course of a lifetime and can allocate us within a group. But although we may be part of a group, sharing the main elements, thought and belief, we all have our own individuality. This is depending on many factors that are individual to us, such as family, origin, gender, age, religion, language, sexual orientation, social background, etc. And we don't have to forget that culture is something that is constantly changing. Popular culture and high culture are traditionally set against each other to be understood. The main difference between them has to do with social class and the notion of access. Popular culture would be a culture called mainstream, easily accessible and shared by most people in a specific place or around the world if it is a globalized element of culture. In opposition, high culture is used to be the culture of the elites, a culture with restricted access, either because of its costs or its scope of dissemination. For example, a hamburger in McDonald's will be considered as popular culture because it is mainstream and accessible for most people. On the other hand, dancing ballet is traditionally known as high culture because it is not accessible to everyone. The culture industry will be the element of mass diffusion of popular culture. It is also an economic field concerned with producing and distributing cultural goods and services, for example, books, music, cinema, TV, radio, video games. It is, in some way, the monetization side of the culture. But we could criticize that view, arguing that it is very categorical and not always or not close anymore to our reality. Why is this categorization so questionable? First of all, because time has changed. Our society is not the same than the one in which cultural studies were created. Also, because the concept of culture is not something fixed. Those notions are changing, can be readapted or used and even appropriated. Let's have a closer look of it. We can say that those notions are changing because we are living in a globalized world and our society is constantly changing. Today, the access to popular or high culture is easier. For example, we can learn how to dance ballet online or listen to an opera representation on YouTube for free. Those elements traditionally seen as high culture are not as inaccessible as they were before. On top of that, many associations and institutions promote culture in disadvantaged areas. The main issue for accessing to high culture today will be the financial problem, implying that it can prevent people to benefit from it, for example, going to the opera. But regarding to the knowledge, we have more access to it than before, thanks to internet, university, year abroad, etc. But It is also questionable because some specific element of one culture can be used or appropriated by the other culture. For example, high culture can borrow some elements of popular culture, which is traditionally the opposition of this culture, for economical, political, or tourist purposes. Let's look at some specific examples. Let's look at the use of popular culture for economical purposes. In my opinion, one of the best examples to illustrate this concept would be football. Football is a sport that is traditionally associated with popular culture due to its ease to play, just it doesn't need any specific equipment, the accessibility of its accessory, just a ball, and the collective aspect it holds. It is not an individual sport. That said, because of its huge extent, football is a sport that is run by the elites who have seen in it a good way to make it very lucrative. Indeed, the amount of money earned by football clubs and various football organizations contrasts with the biography of many players. In his book, Stéphane Millard also highlights the fact that many people can have an identification process with the history of many football players. Today, the difficult childhood experiences by those football legends remind us of the popular side of the football, which is at the same time managed and used by the elite through culture industry to generate huge profits. The concept of meritocracy and player selection has recently been challenged with the desire to make it more elitist with the creation of a new competition, an idea that was widely contested as it would remove its popular and accessible sides. These attempts at total appropriation by the elite have therefore not worked. Let's have a look at the appropriation of popular culture for political purpose. To illustrate these concepts, I choose to use the song Uma Casa Portuguesa of Amália Rodrigues, a famous Portuguese singer of fado. She is known and criticized for being close to the dictatorial regime and for participating in the establishment through her support. The dictatorial regime being the highest institution in Portugal at that time, Amália Rodrigues was indeed part of an elitist group, and yet she praises the merits of leading a simple life in this song. Indeed, in the lyrics, we can observe a romanticization of poverty through certain expressions such as joy of poverty, in the poor comfort of my house, and it doesn't take much to be happy. Amalia Rodrigues advocates a simple way of life in which people should be happy in their poverty and avoid asking for more at the risk of losing their happiness. In reality, the simple and modest way of life she defends is often defended by dictators. In this case, we could talk about a double appropriation of Amalia Rodrigues, and more generally to the establishment, because they appropriated themselves the fado, a musical genre used to represent the lower class. But Amalia Rodrigues is also appropriating the modest way of life that she probably did not share. In the music of establishments, Amalia Rodrigues was an important part of this cultural industry, again as an instrument to spread this ideology on a large scale. Popular culture for tourist purpose. Let's take the famous example of samba in Brazil. This dance was originally a popular dance created by lower class in the northeast of Brazil and rejected by the white upper class because of its African roots. But because of the enthusiasm around this movement, samba became a very important cultural movement in Rio de Janeiro thanks to the creation of many samba schools. It was quickly appropriated by the elites. Samba has been widely used as national touristic representative emblem of Brazil, almost becoming a cliché. This element of popular culture has been taken over so much by the elite that it has become mainstream, and we even have the impression that it's make invisible the other popular dances in Brazil. Samba has the monopoly of dances in this country in terms of national representation thanks to the help of a huge cultural industry. Is the contrary also possible? Can popular culture appropriate elements of high culture? It is of course possible because, as we said before, in terms of knowledge, high culture is getting more accessible than before, and some people like Augusto Boal worked to make high culture accessible to disadvantaged area, for example, thanks to the Teatro do Oprimido in favelas in Brazil. But the access to it is still restricted when it comes to economic issues that only privileged people can afford. To conclude, through this presentation, I first wanted to argue that although definitions exist for popular culture and high culture, these concepts are not fixed and can change. These cultures can be readapted, used, or appropriated for various purposes, like for example, tourist, economical, and political, as we saw with football, songs, and dance. Concerning the cultural industry, it represents a tool used by the elites for the dissemination of popular culture. Thank you for your attention.